By the time the cat released its vice grip on Louise's tail, the mouse was too paralysed by fear to even consider running. With much of her mental faculties restricted, Louise could only stare up at the controller of her fate. The massive beast glared down at her with those watchful green eyes, shining bright enough to illuminate a dark room. As the two stared motionlessly at one another, a desperate thought of hope managed to escape the tangled maze of Louise's mind. It was true this cat was beyond intimidating in appearance, but Louise wasn't entirely sure what kind of personality it had. She knew it had an appetite that could rival even her own, but beyond that she had no clue what category this creature fell under. Perhaps at heart it was no different than the timid barn cat she and her dad had befriended all those years ago. Finding the strength to speak, Louise called out the name she had seen written on those food bowls. Ambrosia. Based on the way the cat's ears pricked up, Louise was convinced that she had guessed its name correctly. It gave her the courage to continue. She began by apologizing to the cat for disturbing its sleep and taking its strawberry. She set the strawberry down as a peace offering, insisting that the cat would never see hide nor hair of her again if it let her go. She attempted to butter the cat up, insisting that a cat so big surely had a big heart to match. She was reasonably certain it was a lady cat, so she added that a lovely lady like herself surely didn't have the stomach for violence. She gauged the cat's face for a reaction. Louise wasn't certain, but she thought it was smiling, so she smiled back as best she could, putting all of the manners her dad had taught her to use. Was she getting through to it? Had she said something wrong? Could the cat understand her words? She wasn't ashamed to become a total kiss-up, but she wasn't certain what traits the cat would even want to be praised for. Was it proud of its fluffiness? Its appetite? Its fur markings? Louise didn't know what to praise, but she knew she had to pick something. In the end, she blurted out that she'd never seen such a fat cat before, and she instantly felt the colour seep out of her pores. Why had she said that? It had sounded much better in her head. But who would ever take that as a compliment? Accepting that she had possibly sealed her fate, Louise put on her cutest, most innocent face, and then she waited to see how the cat would respond. Back when Louise lived in the barn with her dad, she would often play fetch with the barn cat. She'd tie up some hay into a ball and toss it out the window, watching with joy and amusement as the cat would clumsily fumble over itself to clamber out the window and retrieve it, only to bring it back with an ignorant grin on its face, hungry for more. Louise never understood what made that cat so eager to chase around a simple ball of hay, so she was surprised to see Ambrosia present her with a similar toy, a ball made entirely of yarn instead of hay. Louise got closer to inspect the yarn, checking to see if there was anything special about it. After finding nothing spectacular, Louise offered to play fetch, feeling a little nostalgic at the prospect. Ambrosia simply nudged the yarn closer, as if suggesting Louise to take a closer look. Curious, Louise peered into the tangled maze of yarn. As she stared, she felt her mind slipping away into the crisscrossing red lines. She started appreciating it like a work of art, the lines flowing in random yet orderly methods and converged into one collective sphere. Was this what Ambrosia wanted to show her? Was this cat a lover of the arts? Louise was beginning to see the appeal. Before Louise could get too impressed, she suddenly realized that it wasn't just her mind that was lost in the bright red yarn. It was her body, too. As she was admiring the look of the yarn ball, something had shoved her inside from behind. She scrambled to free herself, but she only ended up hopelessly entangled, loosely enough that she could squirm, but firmly enough that she couldn't squirm free. She cried out Ambrosia's name for assistance, but by that point the ride had already started. Up and down Louise was thrown, carelessly and playfully. The yarn ball would fall onto the cat's paws, getting kicked around before being launched high into the air once more. Were Louise 20 years younger, the experience may have been exhilarating. But right there, in that moment, it was all she could do to keep her heart from leaping out her mouth and screaming. Was this her punishment? Was she getting her just desserts for stealing the strawberry? She wasn't used to such a thing. Her dad had been one to spare the rod when Louise acted up. She wondered if her gluttonous mannerisms would be as much of an issue if she had someone like Ambrosia as a mum. Perhaps this would be good for her in the long run. While she couldn't stop herself from squeaking in terror, Louise decided to suck it up and accept the cat's punishment. After all, if she could earn the cat's forgiveness, it was worth a little mortal terror. Despite Louise's best efforts, it seemed her mortal terror was slated to last a little longer. After Ambrosia finally tired of the yarn ball, the cat suddenly dropped it and walked off, as if its mind was suddenly wiped of Louise's existence. Louise thought it was a good sign, as if the prison guard had just thoughtlessly dropped the keys to her cell in front of her. However, she still couldn't quite squirm free of the yarn. She spent a few minutes struggling, using her teeth to gnaw through the tasteless licorice. But just as she was about to find an opening, a loud and mysterious wind from above suddenly ripped her from her bonds and took gravity as payment. Louise was sucked into a dark plastic tube. There was hardly an inch of room to move around. She had slept in sewer pipes that were more spacious. But before she could make heads or tails of her predicament, the mysterious gust of wind roared again, this time spitting her out of the tube and into the open air once again. The air just kept blasting out at her, and Louise was left dangling in place, too small to fall and too heavy to float. It was then that Louise realized she was being assaulted by some kind of air-controlling device. And at her backside was Ambrosia, manning the switch to the machine. Louise understood clearly. This was the second phase of her punishment. Every few seconds, Ambrosia would flick the switch back and forth, changing the direction of the wind to pull Louise in and out of the tube. Looking at Ambrosia's face, Louise could see a sinister grin that only seemed to grow the more Louise squeaked. Was this more than just an act of justice? Was this payback for the fat cat comment? Thinking about it, Louise herself had once set a pitfall trap for an ex-lover that called her a fat rat, and her expression at the time wasn't too different than Ambrosia's was now. Perhaps it would be hypocritical to hold this cat in contempt for getting enjoyment out of this. With that in mind, Louise decided to let the cat have her catharsis. Though her sides started to chafe from sliding in and out of the tube so much, at least she could feel good that she wasn't yet too fat to fit inside. Louise couldn't fathom how much longer this punishment would go on. After Ambrosia tired of the wind machine, Louise was taken into the next room over. It wasn't the kitchen, so Louise had never encountered it before. Much of it was too dark to see, but Louise could make out the desk that hosted a series of black boxes on it, with one of the black boxes off to the side on the floor. Ambrosia grabbed a small round device that was resting on a thin rectangular cushion and tossed it aside, placing Louise on the cushion in its place. Then the cat pressed a button on the lower box, and a blinding light shone from the upper one, accompanied by a fanfare of electronic instruments. Ambrosia sat down in the chair in front of the desk and put on a set of fancy-looking earmuffs with an attached stick that extended to Ambrosia's mouth. Louise wasn't sure what purpose the earmuffs served, as Ambrosia wasn't even wearing them on her ears. Nevertheless, the cat was fixated on the glowing box, while at the same time refusing to release her grip on Louise. In terms of punishment, it was far tamer than the yarn ball or the air machine. Ambrosia would slide Louise around the mat with erratic movements, occasionally pressing down on Louise's backside every few seconds. Louise couldn't understand how this movement translated to the shiny box, as Ambrosia seemed to be really happy with what was going on, hardly paying any mind to the mouse at all. Perhaps Louise was being used as a stress ball while Ambrosia consulted the shiny box. Reaching into the desk, Ambrosia pulled out some junk food to snack on during her box game. The smell surprised Louise, as she had never imagined that food could be found in the house outside of the kitchen. She was especially surprised to see Ambrosia pull out a homemade ice cream float that was still projecting its coldness. Fridges go in kitchens, not dark mystery rooms. Did this cat have a second fridge just for playing box games? More importantly, Louise was desperately trying to figure out if she had managed to win the cat's favour yet. She was content to act as the stress ball or whatever if the cat would just sign a release on her detainment. Once she got used to it, the pressure from Ambrosia's paw was even a bit relaxing, like a deep tissue massage. She wanted to ask Ambrosia if they were square, but it didn't seem like quite the right time to ask. Whatever game Ambrosia was playing, she appeared to be winning. Louise's eyes still hadn't adjusted to the light after being removed from the box room, but she could tell from the colour of the wallpaper that she was in another new room. She wondered if she would ever see the living room or her beloved family again. Short of earning Ambrosia's forgiveness, Louise had been counting on the cat getting bored or running out of things for her to do, but each of the cat's cages just seemed to give way to another. After having her fill of snacks and box games, Ambrosia seemed to be in the mood for a nap. It made sense. Most of Louise's memories of cats involved them sleeping, or being drowsy enough to lull to sleep, a fact to which she attributed most of her family's survival. Even so, it seemed she wouldn't be getting out of this one quite so easily, as Ambrosia set a hairbrush in front of Louise before assuming the curled position of a sleepy kitty. She also refused to close her eyes until Louise began brushing her fur, reopening them each time Louise took a break. Louise calculated her options. Even if Ambrosia did nod off, Louise felt as though all of her goodwill would fly out the window if she was suddenly gone when Ambrosia woke up. And that was assuming she could even get away. What if she made a run for it before Ambrosia was fully asleep? There was no way she could outrun a cat at her age. Beyond that, where would she even go? She didn't even know what room she was in, which might have even been the reason the cat chose this room for nap time. Who knew what kind of crazy rooms this house was hiding? One wrong turn could take her right into the hall of mousetraps. She may as well have been trapped in a maze. Without some pungent cheese to guide her to the exit, her feet were glued in place. While her condition was disconcerting, there was something else eating away at her. Before settling down, Ambrosia had brought with her a bowl of buttered brownie bites from the box room to serve as one final snack before bed. Though the promise of escape was tempting, Louise could hardly focus with those puppies licking her nose. Like the strawberry cake that came before, the smell was heavenly, and this time they were tantalizingly close. One of them was even hanging out of its porcelain lodging, extending its reach towards Louise like a forbidden lover. Louise wanted to accept its embrace, to grant it a simple peck on the cheek. She might have gotten away with it had she been pampering one of the lazy cats from her childhood. Because of that fact, she underestimated Ambrosia's energy and greed. Louise never could have imagined just how watchful the cat's eyes were when it came to her food.